Hello, welcome everybody. Happy Earth Day. I'm Rachel Goldberg. I'm Programs Coordinator at the Manassas Museum.
And I'm Mary Helen Dellinger, and I'm the Curator at the Manassas Museum.
And we are here to show you around a little bit our stop on the graffiti trail, Liberia House. Before we get started, just to let you all know, Liberia House is right here on Portner Avenue. If you're local, you're welcome to come over and enjoy our beautiful grounds. The house is obviously closed right now, but you can enjoy our walking tours. You can take a look at the work that's happening to get our garden installed and imagine what that's going to look like. And so we hope you'll come visit the grounds. We also, before we head inside, I'd like to just take an opportunity to acknowledge the enslaved craftsmen who helped build the house and the enslaved family who was left behind when the family evacuated during the Civil War. Because if it weren't for them, we would not have a graffiti trail stop to talk about today. So with that, let's head on inside. Although those chairs are very comfortable. So here we are on the first floor of Liberia House. We're in the hallway. Mary Helen, can you tell us just a little bit about what makes Liberia special?
Yeah, sure can, Rachel. So this is one of the oldest buildings in Manassas. It was built in 1825, and it actually has a nickname. Many of the soldiers that were here called it the Brick House, because obviously it's made out of brick. It remains largely the same today as it did when the Ware family who had it built were in residence. So if they were to come back today, they would recognize the home. There's been no real major changes or renovations. We also believe this to be the only private home in America that was visited by both President Davis in 1861 and Abraham Lincoln in 1862. So we think that that house holds that distinction. Now last week, the staff at Mclaughlin claimed to have the tallest soldier that left graffiti. We think we have the shortest soldier here at Liberia because of where he signed on the wall, and you'll get to see that when we go upstairs in a minute.
So, and speaking of the other stops on the graffiti trail, can you put Liberia House a little bit in context with some of those other stops? Sure.
So we've already learned about Blenheim, which was 2 weeks ago, and Mclaughlin last week. So all three of these sites have Civil War soldier graffiti, obviously. Liberia came along first, built in 1832, and then Mclaughlin shortly after that, and then Blenheim after that in 1859. So ours seems to be the earliest of the three houses that we've seen so far. All three houses have a fairly similar look to them. If you look them up on their websites, you'll kind of see a lot of similarities from the exteriors. And interestingly, Albert Wilcoxon, the first owner of Blenheim, again the first house that we saw in this series, is related to the Ware family. Albert, he had a brother named Josiah, and Josiah married Julia, who was one of the Ware daughters. So there's a family relation there. That's kind of interesting.
Can you do, just real quick, go back to your front page notes. Sure. Can you do those dates again real quick? I missed them.
Sure. So Liberia, 1832. I unfortunately do not have the date for Mclaughlin. I did not.
Okay.
I'm not clear what that date is.
I bet Rob can tell us.
Rob Orson, if you're watching.
1832 for.
Oh, there we go.
For Mclaughlin, 1825.
I'm sorry, 1825 for Liberia, 1832 for Mclaughlin, and Blenheim in 1859. Get all our dates straight.
Okay, great. Awesome. So was that it for the context?
Yes.
Okay, so with that, we're going to head upstairs. We're going to have our lovely Lisa, the camera lady, head up first. So talk amongst yourselves while we travel upstairs. We're standing in a hallway that's very similar to the hallway that was downstairs. upstairs. So she's going to pan, hello. She's going to pan around to, did you already do the bedroom? To the other room that contains the majority of our signatures. Mary Helen, can you tell us a little bit about why it seems like the graffiti is concentrated in these two rooms?
Sure. So it does seem like the graffiti is concentrated in just very localized up here in the upstairs. But when conservators were doing work to remove the 20th century wallpaper and several layers of paint, we speculate that there's writing on every single wall in the house, just based on little teeny marks that they found here and there. Now, most of this graffiti we're not going to be able to recover because of the layers of paint and everything that's over top of it. But what's interesting is, in this room that you're seeing right now on camera, water damage from a time before the roof was replaced actually activated the salts that were in the plaster, and that helped, that wetness helped actually to preserve the graffiti that you see here. So the conservators were like, that type of damage was also to our benefit in one way.
Awesome. All right, so now that we know about a little bit about the graffiti, can you tell us about these guys? Like, who are they?
Sure. So we've identified 8 men in total. There's more signatures on the wall, but we have identified 8 guys. A lot of different ranks are represented as we did the research. We have some privates, we have some captains, a lieutenant, and even 1 sergeant. So we'll talk about the graffiti first in this room. We'll skip over Mr. Day first. So James Mclaughlin was the first signature that we found, and he is right in here. There's Mclaughlin. You can kind of see that underlying thing. And so just to tell you a little bit about him, he was with the 26th New York Volunteers, and he was a captain. And after the war, he became a professional wrestler. So we think that that's kind of interesting. John Dayton, who's also on this wall. He's harder to see. That's another gentleman named Lieutenant Connett. Dayton is here, I think. His signature is very hard to make out. We always have to look for him when we're over here. So John Dayton was with the 34th Pennsylvania Infantry, and he was an officer. He held the rank of lieutenant. So Leverett Horatio Waldo, who's over here on this wall. Now, he gets the award for best name so far that we found. He is right there. So you can see Waldo. We made out his name. He was a private with the 130th New York Infantry, and he fathered 8 children. So in addition to best name, he also had a lot of kids. So Mount Zion and Graffiti House, we challenge you to see if you can come up with a better name than good old Mr. Waldo. Where's Waldo?
Yeah, what was the one from Ben Lomond last week? Cranston?
Yeah, Cranston.
Wallace Cranston.
Wallace Cranston. Sorry, Ben Lomond.
We've got Leverett Horatio Waldo.
Yes,
so
we have that. And then there's obviously other signatures up here. I think you have one, Adam McKelvey. Do you have a copy of his signature there, Rachel, that we can zoom in on?
Yes, ma'am, I believe I do. This one?
Yeah. So if we can zoom in on this. So this is why it's so hard. This is with enhanced, if you want to zoom in on that, Lisa. This is why it's so hard to make these things out, is because they're just very faint on the walls, and you really have to puzzle them out. So it helps when they have written down their regimental units or their units that they were in, because then we can go back and start to look, even if you can only puzzle out part of the name. If you can figure out, okay, they were with the 121st New York, then you can go back and look and say, okay, who had a name that started with M, and then you can start to narrow it down. So that kind of helps a little bit when you're doing the research.
I just want to point out real quick too, Lisa, if you can pan to the walls, one day the house will be open again, and we'll be able to have people in, and you can come see the graffiti for yourselves. And when you come in, if you come into this room and look for these little green spots on the wall, each of those little green spots denotes a finding of some sort. So it might be a whole signature, it might be a partial signature, or it might even be, like way over there on the left on the wall, a beautiful sketch that somebody made.
Yeah, we don't know who this is supposed to be, but you can see there's his head right up here, and then his shoulders kind of come down there.
Do we know who did it? Is it signed?
It's not signed. It's an unsigned work.
An unsigned work of art. All right.
We had a question about the line on this wall, and that's just the remains of some old wiring from the early 1900s. You can see the plaster is kind of worn away there. And you can see all the rain damage you were talking about.
Yep. Plaster will act like a sponge even when it's old and just soak up the water.
And actually, Lisa, I'm glad that you brought that up. I just wanted to pause and encourage people to ask questions. Are there any other questions?
Someone asked, why did they sign the wall?
Great, that was my next question.
That's a great question. We get that a lot. So mostly, you know, as you've seen, they sign their names, they sign their unit numbers, and they sketched. So using mostly graphite, a type of pencil back then, maybe charcoal, but mostly pencil. So we don't know why they did it, but think about, why do people do that now? Like, why do you go into a bathroom in a public place and somebody's written their name on the wall, or some type of little poem or something? So this type of thing apparently is something that's gone on through the ages. People signing. I personally think that some of these men wanted to leave something that just said, you know, you're getting ready to go into battle, it's uncertain, you might be obviously really scared or nervous. This could be a way for them to say, I was here, a way to leave a remembrance. So that's my personal opinion on that. No kind of research has been done on that, I don't think. Any other questions on there before we move on? Or?
No?
No? Okay. Questions? Right.
Do you want to go into the bathroom and show those signatures?
Sure. While we're talking about signatures, let's go look at the other room. So this room you're about to see would have been the end of a hallway. It was obviously, when the house was used up until the 1980s, it was turned into a bathroom because there wouldn't have been indoor plumbing during the Civil War when the house was built. This signature over here on the wall is Captain Levin Bevan Day, another very cool name. This was the first signature that we found. So you can see him right there.
We have a picture of him if you want to show it.
Sure.
Oh, you've got it.
That's better. So this is what we know Captain Levin Bevan Day looked like. A very striking, handsome man, posed here in his uniform with sword. And then also in the corner over here.
And his great-great-great-granddaughter.
Oh, there she is. Yep. She came back to see that. And then also Private John Benjamin of the 26th New York over there. These are really hard to see because we can't get in this room. The floor's exposed. But these were the first signatures that we found that were uncovered.
Mary Helen, what did they use to make the signatures on the wall?
So they likely used pencil. A lot of soldiers would carry those around. That's what you were using back then to write letters. It was easier than trying to carry a pen because you had to make ink from scratch. And ink would not have lasted. So mostly pencil. Some places might have seen charcoal. That also would have been, or like burnt wood to scratch something on there. But pencil was a lasting medium. And so that's why we're able to see these things today.
Is there anything that makes the graffiti here at Liberia special or different from the other sites?
So we get that question sometimes when we have tours. I don't really think our graffiti is any more special than any other site on the trail. I mean, obviously some houses have a lot of graffiti, others may just have a few signatures. I think we probably fall somewhere in the middle just from what we've uncovered. What's special to me is that men from all walks of life were here, and we know that because we've done the research. You had officers, you had enlisted men, you had jewelers, farmers, a professional wrestler. All these guys were here signing the walls, and so that's just, all of these signatures are special because of its plainness, quite frankly. They were just leaving their mark here.
It's extraordinarily ordinary.
Yes.
And speaking of research, has there been any research into finding out if there are overlaps in signatures at the different graffiti sites?
Oh, so like a man that signed here would have signed somewhere else? I don't know of that. Any research has been done if there's overlapping signatures. I'm sure all the different houses have lists. That would just be a matter of comparing. If anybody is interested in wanting to do that project, let us know. I'm sure we can, if you're bored and at home and want to do a little bit of research for us, let us know.
It's a great quarantine project.
Yeah, it's a great quarantine project. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then another thing that that strikes me is that all of the signatures that we've uncovered in the house have been Union soldiers.
Right.
So were Confederate soldiers just too polite to
So
graffiti someone's house?
I don't really think that Confederate soldiers would have been too polite. So likely what happened was the Confederate Army was here first. My bet is that they probably also signed the walls. And then, the Ware family was still in residence then. They may have tried to clean that off. As you're living here, you don't want people signing your walls. And then the Union Army came in and signed right over top of whatever was there. So I bet if we were to be able to, technology advances enough that you could get more of this paint off, I bet you might find a signature or two from a Confederate soldier, and probably much more than we've identified.
I'm going to throw you a curveball here.
Okay.
What kind of technology did the conservator, and Lisa, you might know this too, what kind of technology did the conservator use to uncover these signatures? Like, were there any x-rays or anything like that, or was it pretty manual?
It was very manual. It was inch by inch. Chris Mills was our conservator, and he used a scalpel to remove much of the paint and wallpaper. He used various chemicals to try to get down to the layers. And these were the most promising rooms where he found. He found scribbles on some of the rooms, and we have some exposures that are still here where he found little scribbles, but nothing identifiable. And it was really the two rooms that we're showing you where we found the most.
Yeah, now downstairs, of course, with the money that we had to work on the house, we repainted the walls in the style that's appropriate to the time when it was built. So anything that was there is still underneath a new layer of paint, but it's we didn't
It's actually under a paper that's very removable. Okay. So if technology improves 50 years from now, they can take down that paper and look for more that may have been covered up. Right. We also had a question about what we're doing to preserve the graffiti. And when Chris uncovered the walls that we've showed you, he used a UV protectant and a sealant on it so that nothing can happen to it right now, what he's uncovered.
And we've also covered all of the window openings that you see. There's no evidence here that we've been able to find that there were ever any curtains or other types of window coverings inside the house. Outside the house had shutters, but they're not up right now. Mm-hmm. But we did cover all of the windows with like a UV film. It's like a thing you can basically lay on top of the glass and heat seals it on there. So
yeah, I think Paige showed it last week at the moment.
And this glass is not original, so that's another question we get sometimes. So yeah.
And when you come to the house, because you will be able to come to the house one day, you can see throughout the house little windows like this one behind me that were made in the surface of the wall to look for signatures. There's another window or two. Thanks, Mary Ellen. There's another one or two downstairs in the hallway that are sort of windows into time, if you will, that the conservator made to look for signatures. So that's kind of an interesting little process moment that you can see.
And we had a question about when the first signature was found, and that was back in 2001 when the Manassas Museum took possession of the house after various people had been living here and uncovered the first one here in what was the bathroom.
And that was, as we talked about, Levin Bevan Day, the soldier that we showed you a picture of. So that was the first one. And then the other ones that we all showed, all the groupings in that one room, that was just 3-4 years ago, right?
That was in 2013, most of them were uncovered.
Yeah, that long ago.
And
that work was just yesterday.
Seems like 2013 was just yesterday.
And we do have a question if folks will be able to take the tour to see the graffiti once the house is opened again.
Yes.
So.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
We were planning on having Liberia house tours, I believe it was the second Saturday of every month starting in April. So as soon as we're able to reopen again, we'll start up those tours.
Safely reopen, right.
Yeah.
And we have lots of information that we aren't able to share in this format. So there's takeable handouts and everything. So when you do come for the tour, you'll get a whole lot more than what we're able to impart right now.
Yeah, yep. And yeah, more than just about the graffiti as well. More about the history of the house and the people who lived here.
Right.
And the house is big enough. You can social distance all you need to.
That's right.
So Mary Helen, what do you think the Ware family thought of the graffiti?
So I can only imagine. I mean, how would you feel, if you came home from somewhere and somebody had gotten into your house and written all over the walls? Or like, how do you feel when your kids take their crayons and color on the walls? They probably thought it was vandalism. And we've actually had some descendants say to us when we talk about graffiti, they're like, not graffiti, vandalism. So, I guess it's all in your point of view. But they probably weren't too happy about it, and they probably, why we found maybe less downstairs, and this is again speculation on my part, they probably tried to clean that up down there a little bit in the rooms that they spent the most time in on their first floor. So I would imagine they tried to scrub the walls as best they could when they came back. So I can't imagine, I wouldn't like it. So.
No, it must have been something else to come back to, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting close to wrapping up. Are there more questions?
Well, we heard from our colleagues at Blenheim, and they said they are working on a list of overlapping signatures. So we hope to see that soon.
That's great.
And someone else asked for more information, and if you go to manassasmuseum.org, we have information on all the signatures we've uncovered, just a little more detail about the soldiers themselves and about what's been done so far in the house and what plans are for the garden that was mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. And these great pictures that Mary Helen has been showing are also on that website, along with a little bit more context of each of the signatures.
So one thing that I do want to mention, and other sites may have done this, I don't know. I know we haven't heard this yet from other sites. Is we have a fabulous museum volunteer, Mrs. Margaret Benning, who also works out at the Relic Room, and Margaret can tease anything out of the historical record with a minimum of information. I've never seen anything like it. And every time we've uncovered a name, we've given her that information, and she tracks these men forward in time. Most people track backwards. What do you want to know about them? And she does that too. But she also tracks them forward in time, and she managed to track down descendants of every single soldier that we've managed to identify so far, and most of them have come back. Here we have, I think you have a good color, good color picture. Here we have, these are the descendants of William Connett standing in the room that we were just in. This is Margaret here that did the research, and there they are. I don't know their relationship to the Connett family. I was not here that day. I did not get to meet them. But they were very excited to stand in the same room as their however many, three, four times great-grandfather, whatever it is, and see where he wrote his name on the wall. And I think one family even told us they didn't know they had a Civil War soldier until we got in touch with them. So they've all been very, very excited to come back. The museum has realized some gifts to the collection as a result of that. So that's kind of been a fun project to kind of bring the house connected to the present day.
Yeah, that's great.
That other sites should try and do. If you have staff resources, I highly recommend that.
They're all going to put you in charge of doing that.
No, we can put Margaret in charge of doing that.
Well, something that strikes me about all of these signatures is, all the signatures we've uncovered, as well as the signatures from the other sites, is just kind of how ordinary these guys are, and in the way they just wanted to, like you said before, just kind of leave their mark before going off into the uncertainty of war, or, coming from they were a farming background or a jeweling background or whatever. They're just ordinary guys. Some of them were just kids. I think Waldo was like 20 years old or something, and enlisted with his brother. So it strikes me how ordinary they all are, but I wonder if any one in particular stands out to you as a favorite.
So my favorite is kind of a little bit biased. So John Benjamin, who we looked at in here already. Again, we'll show him one more time if anybody's tuned in late. There he is, John Benjamin. So he is my favorite. He was again with the 26th New York. The reason he's my favorite is because he not only fought here, but if you look at his service record, he also fought again in Fredericksburg, where, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Civil War, a very significant engagement took place about 40 miles south of here in that town in December of 1862. And I live in Fredericksburg, and on ground that was the battlefield at that time. So, and occupied by the Southern Army before and after the battle. So I'm kind of partial to anything that relates to the battle there. So I think it's kind of cool that there's a man that's fought likely right there where I live, and also was here in this house that, I'm kind of semi in charge of here for the city of Manassas. So that's kind of two things for me. So he's my favorite. And I'll look for that.
I think that you bring up something that's really interesting, though, and that is that almost everywhere we go in Northern Virginia, there's history. Oh, yeah. And so it's something to keep, as my mother would say, something to put in your toaster and think about when you're out walking around, see what pops up. There's just so much rich history in the area, and it's great to make personal connections to it.
Yeah.
Both at home and at work.
All right. Any other questions?
We had a question about if the names that we've uncovered, those soldiers, did they survive the war?
I believe that all of them that I looked at, that I mentioned, survived the war. So yes, they did, which is, to me, extremely unusual when you think about the fact that John Benjamin fought at Fredericksburg, and on the northern side, if you know anything about that battle, the Northern Army took a huge hit that day. So the fact that he made it out of that relatively unscathed and made it through the whole war, because you got to figure when they were signing here in 61 and 62, that's early on. I mean, the war drug on for another several years after that. So not knowing if a lot of them served through to the end, I mean, is what their service records show.
Yeah, and on our website that you mentioned before, manassasmuseum.org, there's a little blurb about each of the 8 gentlemen, and it tells a little bit about what became of them afterwards. Like you were talking about, I can't remember who it was, who went on to have the 8 kids.
Mr. Mclaughlin, the professional wrestler.
Right.
In between wrestling matches. So, and some of them, you know, they went right back to what they were doing before the war. Farmers, jewelers, whatever. None of these guys were professional soldiers that we've been able to identify.
And Mr. Mclaughlin, the wrestler, learned wrestling and like honed his fine wrestling skills as a soldier.
In camp, yeah. Well, in between engagements, yeah. He would wrestle other people. So
burn off steam. Okay, I think we're wrapping up.
We also had one more question about plans for future restoration, especially the bathroom floor, if you've seen the condition of what used to be the bathroom.
Oh yeah, the bathroom floor. Did you show that earlier? So what you're looking at here, that's a lot of modern day insulation that just continues to kind of fall down. And you can see in the back the tiles, the modern radiator, but the floor underneath, that's the original floor from 1825. You can see the axe marks on it, the wooden pins that still hold it in place, and all of that. So that's cool. So I think at some point, the goal is to I kind of like leaving some of this exposed. You can see, you know, 18th or 19th century house construction techniques right here. But we do kind of want to finish this off. So I think that future plans would call for that. Right now we're working outside on the garden area. So if you come by here, you'll see stacks of bricks everywhere and dirt paths that have been marked out. So we're going to brick some stuff outside. We're going to sign the grounds. We've written some signs for the grounds, so they'll go in. But inside the house, the first floor is somewhat considered done, and I don't know that there's any more plans for up here. We do kind of like to have the walls like this. I do, because you can talk about how the house looked and all these types of things, like the question we had about the wiring. That's kind of neat too, to see those types of things.
You can see the layers of history.
Yeah. So.
And on that corny note, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Any last questions, words of wisdom?
All right. Nope.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for tuning in.